Hey, what's going on, guys? So Palworld is out with another update. The biggest thing here is stability. A lot of players are going to care most about the crash fixes because that is the stuff that can turn a good session into a miserable one really fast. One of the more annoying problems was happening around the Panthalus battle on dedicated servers, where the whole lobby could get disconnected or individual players could straight up crash in the middle of the fight. That alone is the kind of issue that makes a boss encounter feel impossible to enjoy, because you are not even losing to the boss, you are losing to the game itself. They also fixed a crash tied to Japanese text input in full screen mode, which is the kind of very specific bug that sounds small until it is the exact thing ruining your launch or breaking your setup. Multiplayer also got some important attention, and this is the area where a lot of weird edge cases were lurking. If someone was already standing in the World Tree area and the host traveled there later, the terrain could look wrong from the host's side, which is the sort of visual bug that immediately makes co-op feel janky. Then there is the tower boss Victor and Shadowbeak, which could actually disappear after using a teleport attack during battle. That is one of those bugs where I can only imagine the confusion in the moment, because you are in the middle of a boss fight and suddenly the boss just vanishes like it got sent to another dimension. The final boss fight also had a respawn related issue where a guest's light could display incorrectly after the host finished the fight while that guest was still waiting to come back in, so that whole sequence got cleaned up too. On the mission side, the patch fixes two problems that could leave the screen faded out in a way that feels way more annoying than it sounds. In both the First Islander and Captured Adventurer, if dialogue got interrupted during a fade-out sequence, the screen could stay stuck in that faded state. That is the kind of thing that can make a mission feel broken, even when the underlying quest logic is fine, because the player is just sitting there with a dimmed screen, wondering whether the game has frozen. Getting those mission states back under control matters more than people might think, especially in a game that already mixes combat, movement, and story beats together so often. Achievements had their own problems too, and for completionists, that is a big deal. Predator Hunter could fail to unlock even after the requirements were met, which is incredibly frustrating when the game itself is not properly recognizing the work you already put in. The same kind of issue was affecting the achievement tied to PAL effigies, so even after collecting the right amount, the reward might not appear the way it should. On Xbox, they also corrected outdated icons for two Lifmonk effigy-related achievements, which is not a gameplay breaker, but it is the sort of polish issue that makes the achievement list look inconsistent. For players who like clearing everything, this part of the update is probably a very welcome fix. There are also a couple of graphics fixes in here that are worth calling out because they affect both appearance and actual playability. On Mac, terrain graphics in the World Tree area could get badly distorted enough to interfere with normal gameplay, so that is obviously the kind of problem you want out of the way as fast as possible. There was also a character model bug where the eye area could render incorrectly during cutscenes or certain actions with specific face types, and that sounds minor until you remember how noticeable a face model issue becomes the second a cutscene starts zooming in. These are the sorts of visual bugs that do not always stop the game from running, but they absolutely change how polished it feels while you are playing. The controls section is actually one of the nicest quality of life parts of the patch because it gives players more direct freedom over how the game feels in their hands. They added key rebinding for attack, that enemy, and inventory, which is huge for people who have been wanting to clean up their layout. There was also a bug where older settings could make unrelated changes look like control conflicts, which is the kind of thing that wastes time and makes menu tweaking feel way more annoying than it should. Middle mouse button assignments could also get incorrectly flagged as a conflict, so that got fixed too. And if you were wondering why the inventory shortcut option was missing from controls, that problem is gone as well. Basically, this part of the update is about making the input setup less stubborn and more usable, which is always good news in a game with so many actions and shortcuts. UI got a smaller fix, but it is still a real one. Sometimes when mining ore, the damage number could show up as 0 when the ore was destroyed, which is one of those tiny visual oddities that immediately makes you question whether something is off with the system. It is not the biggest bug in the world, but little display errors like that add up, especially in a game where players spend a lot of time interacting with resources and building stuff. Cleaning up those little presentation mistakes helps the game feel a lot more consistent overall. And then there's the performance improvement in Sunreach, which might not sound exciting in a vacuum, but performance fixes are the kind of thing players feel instantly. If an area is running better, loading more smoothly, or just putting less strain on the game during normal play, that changes the whole experience without needing some giant announcement trailer to go with it. That is why patches like this matter. They do not always bring a brand new island or a new boss or a flashy mechanic, but they quietly remove friction from the game, and friction is what makes people log off earlier than they wanted to. When a patch fixes crashes, cleans up boss fights, smooths out multiplayer, and improves area performance all in one go, that is the kind of update that makes the game feel healthier the next time you boot it up. What stands out to me most about this update is that it feels focused. It is not trying to overwhelm you with a pile of random changes just for the sake of making a long list. It is aimed at the stuff that actually interrupts play, like disconnects, crash points, broken transitions, failed unlocks, and settings that do not behave properly. That is usually the best kind of patch for a game like this, because the more stable the foundation is, the easier it is for everything else to shine. If you have been playing co-op, running dedicated servers, messing around in late game areas, or just trying to get through quests without the screen fading out and getting stuck, this update should make a real difference. And even if you have not hit all of these bugs yourself, there is a good chance you have felt at least one of that kind of problem in a game like this before. So a cleanup pass like this is always appreciated. And this one is basically the kind of update that makes the game feel a lot smoother without trying to steal the spotlight with some huge new feature. It is mostly a fix pass, but not the boring kind where nothing really matters. This patch goes after crashes, weird multiplayer bugs, broken quest behavior, achievement problems, control issues, some visual hiccups, and even a performance problem in Sunreach. So yeah, it is one of those updates where a bunch of frustrating little things finally get cleaned up at once, and for people who have been dealing with random issues, this is the sort of patch that can make a real difference.